Well, hello everyone. Welcome to Personality Yoda. This is, believe it or not, episode 15 of the Five Voices series. And a special treat today for you. We have the amazing Miss Laura Mears. Laura is a pioneer guardian, so be on your best behavior. Laura, a very, very warm welcome on this Friday to Personality Yoda. Thank you for agreeing to be my guest today.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
It's a pleasure. And Laura, I always ask people to kind of give us a little bit of background. Who is this person that we're engaging with? I think people have got the hang of now that we are all incredibly different, but it's wonderful to hear some of that background. So give us a little bit of the Laura Mears story. Where do you grow up? What do you do? Schooling, jobs, fun, family. Give us a little bit of a portrait of who we're dealing with.
Well, I grew up in an industrial town in the north of England called Ellesmere Port, which is where the Shell refineries all are. So it's sort of visible from the motorway. And I had a pioneer connector father and a nurturer guardian mum. So there was a lot of competence around, a lot of challenge. And the way that my father chose to pioneer was in the area of sport. And unusually in England, he has pioneered basketball in a big way in this country. And so I grew up with all sorts of sports people around. He was at Manchester United, so grew up with lots of interesting people around the football club and the vibe there. And we'd be travelling up and down the country at weekends and even internationally as well. So even though, I grew up in this industrial town, I also got to see the world and got to see, what life was like. So when my headmaster suggested I applied to Oxford, I thought, well, why not? I'm going to go for it. So I found myself arriving in Oxford University and just couldn't believe my eyes. My school had barbed wire all the way around the entrance. And Oxford, as you know, is just the dreaming spires. I remember going to sleep like the first couple of nights, just hearing the bells of the churches and thinking, I can't believe I'm here. I was just I couldn't believe it. Felt so happy to be there. Really enjoyed the study, really enjoyed being around lots of people that wanted to talk about interesting topics and ideas. And
What did you study, Laura? What did you study?
I studied PPE, so philosophy, politics and economics there. So it was pretty busy, lots and lots of, not the traditional sort of student life of just lying in, lots of study sessions and tutorials and lectures and all sorts of extra things as well. It was an amazing time. And then I needed a break after that. So I got a job as a netball coach at a school in Cheltenham, which is where I still live. But soon enough, I sort of did my bit of rest, did some sports coaching, lived in as a house tutor with 60 teenage girls, which I loved actually. Very soon I sort of was looking for pioneering opportunities within the school. So I took the RE and philosophy department on and, really, really brought in different world religions, different philosophical ideas. We took trips to Uganda, took ski trips. And I just sort of, every opportunity there was, I just took it with two hands. Really enjoyed the community vibe there as well, with my parents being quite far away.
Amazing. I can't imagine there were many girls from Ellesmere Port at Oxford with you at the time. You must have had some people who saw that potential in you and in many ways championed it and sponsored it. I bet they were incredibly proud of being able to send somebody to Oxford like you as well.
Thank you. It was interesting. I remember meeting one of the first girls I met was wearing deck shoes, and I'd never seen a girl wear a pair of deck shoes before. And I just thought, what's that? What's going on? So it was culturally really interesting, to be asked which school did you go to as literally the first or second question that comes out of someone's mouth was odd. But I understand.
Well, for people in America who don't really understand how all this works, so Oxford is probably it is one of the top two universities in this country, and PPE, philosophy, politics, and economics, is probably often seen as one of the top degrees to do. In fact, many of our politicians and prime ministers, it's a pretty well-worn path that they go and do PPE at Oxford and then usually become lawyers or workers in Parliament. But a number of our leading politicians, Laura, were any of them there when you were there?
Not any currently there, no. We had a whole load of people coming in from Westminster to talk and to speak. But lots of links with them.
So school building out RE and philosophy was that at Cheltenham College or was that at Dean Close?
Yeah,
Okay.
Dean Close School Foundation.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so there you know, keep going, tell us the story. So you're now, I can only imagine how exceptional your sports teams were and how amazing your exam results were, because Pioneer Guardians don't do anything other than extreme excellence in anything they do. And anyone who comes into their orbit is usually sucked into that plausibility that anything less than your awesome best is not good enough. Would that be true, Laura?
That is true, but I also know that it was because we had an amazing team as well.
Yeah.
Fantastic, amazing team of teachers that taught in RE at that time.
Yeah.
And one of the recruits into the department was a young man called James Mears, who took the classroom next door. I sort of mentored him at first, but it soon became apparent to me that he had a lot to offer. Not just the department, but relationally as well. So we ended up after a little bit of a rocky start, going out and getting married in the school chapel, which was lovely. Two children.
Wow! And how old are your kids now?
They're nearly 9 and nearly 7, so they're doing lots of sports, and they're pretty loud. We've got a Pioneer and a Connector, I think. So we're quite a busy household.
I knew they'd be meticulously 2 years apart because most things run with military precision with characters like you. So that's amazing, Lauren. And so what are you doing at the moment? Just give us a little bit of the context, then I'll go back to the giant piece.
Brilliant. So when I paused to have children, it became apparent that I couldn't carry on with my job in a part-time capacity. So I actually gave it up and found myself sort of at home as a pioneer, but with children.
Yes.
And almost trying to, in a sense, be my mum, who's a nurturer guardian, and emulate her and her high standards of what to give. But fortunately, James, my husband, really understood my need to take ground, which is a phrase that I often use when I think about myself as a pioneer guardian and others as well when I'm coaching, is we need to take ground. And so I just find any way I could, whether it was setting up a baby group on our local estate because there was one that was needed, or neighbourhood things, opportunities at church, whatever it might be. I was pioneering all the way. But I couldn't quite find a model that worked for me with my teaching, mentoring skills that would have the flexibility that I wanted to be able to, run the home as well as use my professional abilities.
Yeah, amazing. So thank you for doing that. I think the thing is people always get a flavour of the different personalities and the different ways it comes out in the way you tell your story. So tell us a little bit about how did you get connected to Giant per se, first of all, and then a little bit around when was the moment you discovered that you were a pioneer guardian and understood what that meant for you, and what were some of the ahas and the implications in those different circles of influence? But talk about the Giant connection first. I'm always fascinated to know, how do people find us?
I think you know this one, Steve, because you feature prominently. 8 years ago, James was a dissatisfied teacher on the verge of burnout. But before he quit the teaching profession, a very good friend who's a mutual friend of yours put us in touch with you and said, James, just go and see Steve. Just go and see Steve before you quit. So we booked a 24-hour intensive, and it was amazing. I'll never forget, James. I stayed with a friend in London with the baby, and James sort of picked me up, and I got in the car and I said, "How are you?" And he said, I think it took him about 48 hours to be able to sort of speak properly. It was completely revelationary for him. And he went from being a square peg in a round hole in teaching to learning who he was, how he was wired, and therefore how he could bring his best. And he's been a much more satisfied, happy and thriving teacher and coach within the school community ever since.
Oh. Well, I wish they were all as happy stories as that, Laura. But so what people don't understand is I followed the James story, and James often updates me on progress, which I'm so grateful for. And I think he then connected me to somebody as well who was going out to be the head of the prep school at Churi. And so there's a kind of this fascinating, and so some of our UK giants have been out to the school out there for a number of, I think Jenny Gordon and Tim Curry went out there a long time ago. But this is actually, even though we passed, this is the first time we've actually spoken to each other, even though we only live a couple hundred miles away. So, this is really exciting. So if I put up my circles of influence tool, Laura, which we try and show people that basically everything is visual, people remember in the new world. So talk to us about you. I mean, you suddenly, James obviously is a great evangelist for things he believes in. You came across voices. What were some of the ahas for you in your self circle to go, oh my goodness, I'm a pioneer guardian? Or did you already know that level of self-awareness? Because there aren't many women who are pioneer guardians, Laura, and hopefully it makes sense as to why sometimes it's where do I fit and how does that work? So talk us through self, family, team, anything that's helpful. How has knowing you're a pioneer guardian really helped you in that self-awareness space?
In so many ways. I think trying to be either a pioneer connector like my father or a nurturer guardian like my mother was really tiring. So first of all, recognizing that it's okay that I found being in the present with my children challenging for long periods of time, and that I actually also needed spaces to go and pioneer, talk about an idea, build something, talk future. Was really liberating, because us pioneer guardians are critics. We're our own biggest critic, really. Everything we do is being constantly turned over in our head. How could I improve that? What did I get wrong? It's quite hard to see the good. Yeah, there was that. I think also the whole thing of me being a pioneer guardian, not a pioneer connector, was helpful, because I realised actually. I do need time on my own to go and process thinking. I'm not as sociable as I thought I was. So always making sure that I have time out to just regenerate and don't get too many sessions with people. Yeah.
And what about you and James? So he's a connector by first voice, isn't he? So in some ways, how did that work? How did the two of you work out this? You said he kind of got you and knew how to create environments for you, but was it always that way?
No, probably not. Before then, I think I worried that I would lead too much, because I was his head of department before we got married. He liked how decisive I could be, because he likes to keep options open. So, I did say to him, I think a couple of times before we did all the giant stuff, well, you knew what you're getting into. You knew who I was. But it's been really helpful. I've really learned to value what he brings in terms of bringing ideas, creativity, leaving space for spontaneity, not having everything planned up to the eyeballs has been really helpful. But he's been amazing, because he has read, listened to, watched everything. He just imbibes the whole giant world. And all the leadership stuff that you recommend beyond the giant world. And so he's my coach. He's constantly coaching me as we go. So I'm very fortunate to have that. Yeah.
That's so lovely. I mean, I think one of the things that people, when they listen to these interviews, we always say that basically, if you will do the work to truly understand the people that you'd love to have a deeper relationship and better communication with, all the tools are in the giant box. And in some ways, I love the fact you can celebrate James's superpower, and I know he celebrates yours. And in a sense, you begin to create a synergy rather than opposites challenge each other. So, that's so lovely to hear, Laura. It's a huge achievement. Most people never manage that. And then they throw in children, which always adds a huge degree of complexity, because you don't have as much free time as you used to have, and actually being able to apply those things into your world as well. So, yeah, that's fantastic. I love that. And, in terms of for you, as you think about how you build teams and how you build organizations, just knowing that that's a superpower of yours hopefully gives you the confidence to go, no, I really am built to lead, and I'm built to bring order, system, structure, discipline, and really to create space for others to thrive in a way that, we always assume that our superpower is really what everyone else has, really. But it really isn't true in your case. You're a very, in many ways, precious leadership gift on the chessboard, but it usually needs people to create the space for you to do that. Would that be fair?
That's completely fair. Because actually being the champion of strategic gains and moving things forward is niche. So you just have to be allowed to do that. It can be a bit of a pain in an organisation, really.
Yeah, that's so good. I mean, so I love just listening to you and knowing that you're at peace with who you were made to be, because sometimes you'll find that particularly very, very strong pioneering women, and I would say the pioneer guardian is the strongest of the three, often almost end up trying to tone down their pioneer guardianness because it kind of isn't the done thing, or there's a gender skew in the process, or there's roles. So for you to actually be at a place where you're owning it and leading it and being you and being healthy, that there aren't many out there who are doing that. I'd be, just interested to know whether you've encountered any we would call the oughts and shoulds, I guess, of being a female who's a pioneer guardian versus, I know, some of the, in many ways, the permissions that the male pioneer guardian gets, because you're supposed to be the alpha, the winner, the killer. Talk to us a little bit about how maybe you've experienced that and how you got to a place where actually you were okay to be you, even if probably to a number of other women you would almost frighten them.
Yeah, well, I think learning that is really helpful. Going, oh wow, is that how I come across? And actually, when I went through the Giant accreditation to become a coach, they were massive ahas for me. I think I went into a period of grief actually for when I realised how impactful my challenge and my grenade launcher weapon could be on others, particularly my sisters who both identify as nurturers. Growing up. So eating some humble pie and actually just going, my weapon is just far too, dangerous. Keep the safety catch on, or keep it for social justice issues rather than for people. So that fire in my belly is there for a reason, but it's about directing it, isn't it? And about finding the things that are the good places to focus it. So that's one. I think vulnerability is a massive aha for me. The opportunity to just be vulnerable, to own when I don't feel as confident as I might come across, and just how wonderful it is to do that. And it's always met with warmth and kindness, and it's actually an invitation to my nurturer friends, because as a woman, you're surrounded by nurturers if you can see them. As a pioneer woman, you can see them, if you can hear them, because you listen first. And actually just I really value the nurturers so much more in my life than I did before I knew all this stuff. So actually inviting them them to partner with me. And actually, even though, I might be able to do every different job at any different time, that's not healthy for me. And I'm not the best at it. Actually inviting other people to do what they do best is just a much more healthy method.
It's so helpful because it's totally counterintuitive, because pioneer guardians are almost grow up wanting to prove their competence to everybody, and actually to show weakness is the last thing you ever want to do. But actually, when you get to a place where you go, you're not trying to prove your competence anymore. Everyone knows you're probably the most competent person in the room. What they really want to know is, are you real? And do you feel any of the vulnerabilities and the sense of, struggle that virtually everyone does? So in a sense, the kind of the pioneer guardian who's desperate to prove they're the most competent person in the room, when everyone already knows they are, actually ends up often getting isolated relationally from people. And it's counterintuitive. The moment, as you said, that you begin to share your weakness, your struggles, you're almost owning your vulnerability and making play of it, almost making fun of yourself. I mean, people often say, they watch Giant, they feel like I'm always just that I'm the one who looks small in all the stories. But that's actually really healthy for pioneers, because it allows other people in. And as you say, with nurturers, once they believe they can actually help you, and there's a way in which what they contribute can add value, you'll find that actually that brings them alive as well. So, don't as you're listening to Laura, just assume, oh, that will always happen for every pioneer guardian woman. It doesn't. And it's really quite valuable to be able to somebody hear you say that as a woman, to go, one of the things I learned was actually me being honest and vulnerable really opened the doors to a relationship and help, which is, great to see. So, Laura, I'm going to move on to our third question, which is one which I'm always slightly in trepidation when I'm dealing with pioneer guardians, because I'd rather be led than lead usually. But if I was your boss, if I was responsible for your well-being, and we have our support challenge matrix, which I know most people are very familiar with, we're always asking, as a pioneer guardian, and we'll do it with a woman first of all, what would high support and high challenge look like that would allow you to feel that you were empowered to be the very best you could be, and were constantly being given the opportunity to grow, expand? And if I was going to try and do that for you, or if I'm listening and I've maybe got kids or teammates or colleagues or whatever it is, give us some clues of what would high support and high challenge look like from your perspective. Just give us some of those ways. Go, Steve, if you really wanted to be a liberating leader for me, these are some of the things that I would really love you to know, and I'd really love you to do.
So the first thing I'd love you to know is that I am my worst critic.
Yeah.
And so I do need to hear the support comments. You know, I read Gary Chapman's Love Languages book some time ago, and really identify with the words, you know, affirmative words. It's the way that I really receive support and love. So that's really important. Even if you might think the pioneer god knows when she's done a good job, she doesn't, because she's thinking about the things she got wrong. So it's a liberation for me in terms of support. And in terms of challenge, I do invite constructive criticism, and I actually feel aggrieved if it's not forthcoming. If I say, how do I know? You know, please let me know. I love having feedback. And so I've worked on ways to ask for feedback where nurturers and connectors who are more relational can actually give it. But I'm gutted if someone says, oh yeah, I thought that wasn't quite right, but they didn't tell me. I feel let down by that. So please do bring challenge with support.
So good. Anything else? Well, I've got a few things I'll add to it, but I want to make sure, you know, come on, tell me, how do I support you well? So yes, I can words of affirmation occasionally. What else do you really need from me if I'm going to create that liberating environment for you?
I definitely want space to be able to go off. And, you know, my guardian second voice will mean that I will ask some questions to clarify what you want me to do. I want to get really specific about what is your goal, you know, what is winning, you know, what does it look like? And then don't micromanage me, trust me, to be flexible, to go off and get the job done and come back to you if I need to. And trust that, you know, that I will deliver, but then also, you know, reconnect and let's sort of follow up and do a sort of review on how it's gone, so I can get the learning, because I'm a constant reformer. I always want to improve on what I can deliver.
Absolutely. So if all of those, I would agree 100% with. The one around words of affirmation that I often say to Pioneer Guardians is, it's rare you need a word of affirmation from everyone. There are often the one or two key relationships that actually they're the ones whose affirmation of competence you need most. So it's sometimes worth actually thinking to yourself, who do I need that from? And they're usually people that you respect their competency and think they're further on. So if I'm your leader and you're not asking me, then it probably shows that I'm not as competent as you would want to be. But it's often quite useful to identify who are those one and two voices that you really need the affirmation from. Because 100 people in the crowd could tell you did a good job. But if the one voice that really mattered didn't say it, that would probably be more of an issue. Do you recognize that, Laura?
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And with clients as well, you know, hearing from a busy client who's amazing, you know, that was a great session today. You really liberated me or helped me move on. I just feel my heart sings. I think, wow, you're so competent. That's a real encouragement.
So Pioneer Guardians can often say that out loud, and all the nurturers and connectors or people who work, oh, I need to encourage you, Laura. And they'll try it. But in the end, it's not their voice you need to hear it from. It's often usually the people you think are further on than you are, or who have a level of competence that you aspire to. And so the challenge piece, I would say as well, that if you're asking me as your boss to go, Steve, I really need to challenge and feedback, that's because you think I'm more competent than you are in certain things, and I can help you grow. So I always give Pioneer Guardians just permission to own their competitive, ambitious, driven tendencies and go, Laura, I love that about you. I want to create the environment where you can have the freedom to play. And I'd also be saying to people like you, I'm never going to put a lid on your career and ambition. I'm going to help you get there. And I'm perfectly aware that if I do my job well, you will go on to far greater things than perhaps I've actually been able to do. So one of the things that leaders can do for Pioneer Guardians is deal with their own insecurity, that the person you're leading is probably going to go on and do greater things than you've done. And rather than being jealous and competitive with them, see it as a privilege to have them with you for a season. Because if you do that for a Pioneer Guardian, they will always credit you in the story they tell of the future, because so few leaders are really able to do that for what is really a stallion who really doesn't need to be kind of told a lot what to do, but just needs some pretty strong structure and guidelines in order to basically go, it's okay to be me. Does that sound familiar, Laura?
It sounds wonderful. And I think I'd just go a little bit further into what you said about competence, which is really helpful, is where I do, where support from a nurturer and a connector does land is in the area of relationships.
Yes.
My work on. So I really want to be excellent in relationships because that's my weak hand. Yes. And so if a nurturer friend says to me, Laura, that was really kind, what you just did there.
I love that.
Thank you for just going slow and not making time for me or listening. I feel $1 million because I know that's my work on, and that's something I don't want to spend all my time doing, but I want to improve at the relational competence as well.
That's so good. That's such a great collaboration between, actually, if you think it's still affirmation of competence, it's just the affirmation of competence for being relational means more when it's coming from your nurturers than it does from a pioneer. So that's good. That's a new little one for me. The other thing I would always say to people like you with support challenges, I would always create the space for you to be the strategic leader. So even if I'm the leader of the team or the organization, and I've got you as someone who's coming through, growing, I would always create the space to go, Laura, if you were in my position, I'd almost treat you as a consultant to me in the business, where I would actually say, okay, if you were me, what's the one thing that I really need to be aware of right now? What am I missing? How would you help me grow? How do you think, if you were CEO, which probably secretly you wish you were, what were a couple of the things that you would be really looking to develop? So what happens is I'm calling up the leadership of the future, not in a threatened way, but I'm calling it up in the private. So you feel the freedom to actually bring your best and challenge me, because I value what it is you bring. Most people, again, you have to be very secure in your own well-being, because if you bring that, it will often be, oh, I was hoping you were going to say I'm doing great, rather than, well, here's the 3 things that I'll be working on if I were you. But there is absolute gold in the consulting gift of the Pioneer Guardian, but it doesn't always come in the softest, most loving environment. And you've got to be good with that. And I would say, I've got my Kevlar on, fire away, I want to get better. But that is another way that you can often, create the sense for the Pioneer Guardian of going, oh my goodness, it's okay to be me. And I don't have to filter or soften or in many ways be on my best behavior because I'm going to upset people being me. That's in the private with me as leader. Have anyone managed to do that for you over the years, Laura?
So anyone have been able to give me the strategic kind of nudges towards where I should go? I referred to my headmaster earlier, who nudged me towards Oxford. Most of my contemporaries went to Liverpool or Leeds because it's in the north.
Yes.
It was exciting. And so when a voice does that, I listen. I go, oh, okay, that's where we're going. I think my dad does that for me too. He's a big fan of the business we've set up in the last 2 years. And there's others as well. But there's not many, you're right, there's not many who would speak to you in that way of giving strategic insights. So I'm hoping for something.
And the last one I would insist on, Laura, if I was your boss, is to say, Laura, we're gonna have to work on the chemistry with people who are less competent than you are, and you're gonna have to learn how to waste time with people in what we call in Giant third gear. So as long as there's a strategic mission in why you're being relationally connected or helping other people, then you're fine. But the moment there is no specific agenda outcome and you're just being with people and almost wasting time just doing apparently nothing, that often is something which the Pioneer Guardian avoids. And by avoiding it, they often miss some of that relational connectivity and humanity, which actually is difficult for them to do, because I don't mind helping people, I don't mind coaching people, but actually just being with people who are not as driven as I am. So that's the growth opportunity, because in the end, I'll always say your peers will always know you're competent and more competent than them. What they want to know is, are you interested enough in them to go, you can win through helping them win? The moment they believe that about you as a Pioneer Guardian, the moment they're more than happy for you to be promoted. But it often is that it's the ability to waste time with people in third gear just to connect for connecting's sake that would always be a growth opportunity. So I'd keep taking you to networking events. I'd keep taking you into social environments where I would almost go, Laura, I want you to waste some time getting to know people, ask some good questions, and find out about them with no agenda, which must be real fun, Laura, to do that, but it would be good for you. That's my last bit of how I would bring a little bit of challenge into the world of my Pioneer Connector, Pioneer Guardian even.
It's great, and I just make it a task. I just write on my list,
this
is how I win.
Of course.
Waste time with people with a tick box, and I get home and I go, yes, I did it.
And have I done enough of it to pass? So yeah, there we go. So now you begin. So some of the nurturers and the connectors listening are like, how can anyone make relationships a task? But the reality is, all of us have areas of what we call conscious incompetence, and learning how to do that is one of those for Pioneer Guardians. There's plenty of other superpowers. So thank you. I hope that's as people listen. I would say that male Pioneer Guardians get away with a lot more. There is less pressure from a male world for a Pioneer Guardian to tone down their Pioneer Guardianness. I think that women, because the majority of women, 70% of them, are relational first before task, often the Pioneer Guardian woman gets shaped and molded, often in a quite helpful way, by the oughts and shoulds of, well, is it okay for a woman to do that? But you also have to get to a point where you go, no, it's really okay to be me. So you often find Pioneer Guardian women are desperately trying not to be Pioneer Guardians for fear of upsetting people, and then getting slightly jealous of their male counterparts who just seem to get away with all kinds of things, and it's somehow okay for a man to behave that way. Any reflections on that, Laura, before we move on?
No, absolutely. I definitely feel like that. And that's why I feel very passionately about women and, the biological differences in terms of, giving birth and the sort of natural career break that can give. And also the way that, that actually instills in women who are pioneers, if they give themselves to that season, empathy, which is exactly the thing we're being told is what companies are looking for. In the future.
That's a natural next step into, I've said, Laura, people like you who will be ambitious and driven. So this is easy. You go, Laura, if money wasn't the issue, I said, okay, the Bank of Giant is going to bankroll it. Every relational network of influence we have in the world is available for us. What business are we going to be doing together if you had the freedom to know or every other responsibility was taken care of, what we call the inhibitions and the prohibitions are removed. So dream with me, Laura, what would we be doing together? I would probably be a more silent partner with you rather than have to drive these things. But if I was your champion, your cheerleader, everything I have is available, what are the type of things that we would be doing together?
Well, that's easy. We'd be building a network and the business around liberating healthy women into leadership. Because after all these years, we're still not seeing enough women on boards. We're not seeing enough women come, through that childbirth stage back into professional capacity. Women get stuck there, and all of that is going to waste. All of that skill, all of that investment, all of that expertise is going to waste because we're just not creating environments where they can retrain, reskill, reassess what they want to do, with the flexibility that we need in order to make sure that women can thrive in those environments and bring so much.
Do you think that COVID and flexible working and hybrid working may actually be, in many ways, a help in going forward in that?
I think it's proven that flexibility works. But I think there's some unspoken questions as well. I was speaking to someone yesterday who was making the point that actually the season has really impacted women the most, because it was the women who were flexi working as along homeschooling, really, in the majority. Statistics come out, and lots of men did a brilliant job as well, but usually in a supportive role to the woman who was leading in that capacity. So I think there's still, that's stuff that hasn't really been reported widely. So I think it's shown up how far back we are, as well as shown up some opportunities as well.
So what do you think? What do you think that could look like? So I love it, and I hear the heart, the passion, and a vision which, in many ways, you can give the rest of your life for, and probably quite enjoy doing that. Do you have any kind of sort of structural pieces in play already, or things you go, these are some of the things I think we could really do? Because obviously there's the women piece, but it's managing the stakeholders and also managing the people with influence, power, and resources who make decisions about this reality. So talk to me, anything you've come up with already, or anything you're thinking already.
Well, I'm part of an amazing sort of group of women who are looking into what we call the female narrative, women in business at the moment. It's international but small group, but we're looking to expand that on. And I think what we're looking at is the idea that we need help, we need allies from the men who are at the top of the organizations, or even from some women who are kind of there and holding that space. And I think that, what does that look like? I think it looks like maybe some sort of an agency, a middle place where which can interact with government, with the professional world in all sorts of capacities, to raise up and provide amazing skilled women to fill positions of leadership where they are needed. So matching up the needs with the women and just bridging that gap, because I just see these stepping stones in between. That's what I think, something I can bring as a pioneer guardian, is seeing the next steps and saying there's too much of a gap at the moment. It's too big a jump for women to just go, I don't know how to get there. I don't even know, I'm not even on LinkedIn, because that's all come in as well in the last few years. What's my next step to develop my professional capabilities and to have something that I can do alongside raising a family? And I think there's just untapped potential out there from a business perspective. So it's in their interests, really, to meet us in the middle of it.
So in the sense of that, the business is almost like a brokerage, a translation, a kind of a matching of almost going, who are the women who are you're in many ways calling up and showing them where some of those insecurities and opportunities, but also then to the employers and the opportunities and the governments and the place of influence, to helping their mindset change and go, okay, here are some of the people that actually we've been working with to prepare for the type of opportunities that we need you to create. Is that a realistic description?
Absolutely. And I think it's an easy sell, because what we're hearing from organizations is our people need to be coached, they need more relational skills, and these are the things that women naturally grow in through that period of time when they're nurturing their friends, or their families as well. So they're coming in highly skilled in the areas that we're hearing from business are the areas that are needed. That's
part of that translation already, isn't it? Which is actually, I think, also helping women understand that potentially having time out to have family is not a bad thing. And actually what you're doing is you're helping them own perhaps and understand some of the skills and the expertise that's being developed as they go through what can often feel like a time which removes them from that world of work. So my last question for you on this one is to go, I, as always, represent everything that is usually wrong with the world. In my daughter's eyes, it's like I'm white, male, middle class, grey hair, of a particular age, and kind of wisdom and financial well-being. So I guess if you were asking for the allies of perhaps my demographic who are in places of leadership, how would we connect with you, and what would you most want us to do if we were saying, Laura, we're aware perhaps we're unaware of it, but we want to be more aware. How could we be allies for you and what you're doing?
That's a great question. Thank you. I think it's about going out of your way to find those women in your networks. And you have a massive network, Steve, being a second voice connector, to call them up and to recognize that there's going to be a gap. There will be some things that they're not up to date with, but that's easy. That's fine. That's not character stuff that needs to come through. It's also, or allying with, agencies, hopefully like us in the future, who will be able to then say, oh, we've got these women, they're asking these questions, maybe just offering opportunities for them to explore different career paths, open walls, meeting you, having conversations, and just actually going out of your way as a businessman to start, finding those women, or to ally with others who can.
So good. And I think kind of obviously I people who know me know I'm surrounded by women. Even my dog is a woman. I've got 3 girls who are 21, 17, 10. I've got Helen, I work with Becky, and it's almost like, I think one of the things I try and do, even though of course I'll never understand fully what it's like to be on the other side of this, to go, I always try and go, for me, I think it's where it feels like I'm being asked to do tokenism, I struggle. Where I'm asked to be a champion for someone I believe in and I can do that, I will, and effectively try and create the opportunity. So, one of the things that Becky, who works for me, said, well, Steve, there are more men in your coaching environment than women. I go, do you know, Bex, there's a reason why, because actually, I don't know quite how I'd be alone anymore with a woman without fearing that either it's going to cause difficulty or whatever it might be. So I think there's this kind of learning, helping men who want to help know how to do it well, because in some senses the HR world and the kind of the woke world of the workplace today actually mitigates against some of the things that you're describing. Because remember, I said wasting time with people it's when you go on the trips together, it's when you have the dinners together, and that's one of those ones which I don't have an answer to, but it's almost being prepared to be a sponsor and being a champion for, particularly for nurturers, Laura, because here's the thing you know all too well now, 60% of women are foundational voice nurturers. So in a sense, they will always need champions. And I can see in many ways, once they've taken time out for family, it's really hard for them to take that next step back into career when everything within them is telling them they weren't good enough in the first place. So I wonder how you've got any thoughts, strategies around how we would champion and think through that, even the wiring difference of some of the women that you're trying to help bridge back into career.
Well, I think perhaps to reach the nurturing women, the middle point would be your pioneerish, connector creator pioneerish women. So investing in them to be healthy, investing in them to hear women themselves, which they may not necessarily do, is bridging the gap. So rather than going directly from you to them, which might feel too big, so actually, if there's other women they can trust, who have grown up in the environment where there's nurturing women around, so they can speak that language, I think that's going to be a helpful stepping stone.
It's brilliant, Laura. Thank you. I mean, and I think time's beaten us again, but I think if you are listening to this and maybe you are a woman who in many ways recognizes that fact, you may have stopped and for children will go, well, how do I retrain, reskill? How do I get my confidence back? Then Laura, I'm sure you can direct them if they reach out to you on LinkedIn or whatever it might be. And conversely as well, I think if you are leading organizations and you in many ways are going, God, I'm not very good at this, or our organization is relatively male at the top end, actually people like Laura, here's the difference. You sound commercially astute. It's not asking me to do it out of pity. It's asking me to do it because there's actually a commercial benefit. And it's actually a skill set that actually we're saying we need to develop. So I know you'll happily receive any kind of inquiries or conversations that people have. But Laura, as always, it's been an absolute pleasure. I had the pleasure of meeting James 8 years ago, staggering. And in the end, watching part of that journey and just seeing where you are and going, I love what you feel called to be and do. I'm excited to play whatever role I can, cheering for, championing, encouraging along the way. And in my experience, when pioneer guardians are healthy, which they are, and they're self-aware and they have a level of humility, that is a very, very powerful combination. So watch out, world. I'm sure Miss Laura Mears will be somebody that we see on our TV screens, in our books, and in our business future. So Laura, thank you for your time today and just being so honest and real. I've loved having you a guest on Personality Yoda today.
Thank you so much for having me.
So next week, by the way, we've got Rachel Montgomery, who is a Guardian creative, and believe it or not, that will complete the entire series of the 5 Voices interviews. So anyway, I'm going to say goodbye. Goodbye, Laura.